the officers from Kwale Police Station. In these difficult times, we stand with the community and remain committed to uncovering the truth and bringing those responsible to justice. Our departmental resources and the officers, in collaboration with the ODPP, are working tirelessly to conclude the investigations within 21 days.
In terms of, if you look at the age, between 18 to 30. If you look at the gender, these are all female. If you look at the way the bodies have been disguised and packaged, all the same. If you look at the place the bodies were thrown into the dump site, just one spot, I get the same. So what are we really looking at? Are we dealing with a cult that is associated with criminal activities? Are we dealing with serial killers that are also associated with criminal activities? Or even, could we be dealing with rogue medical practitioners that are dealing with criminal activities?
Now, President William Ruto has called on the church and Kenyans at large to pray for him ahead of the dialogue that begins this Monday, and that will run for about 5 days, which he says will determine the next cabinet. The president, who had attended a church service in Nyandarua together with his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, said that the country was at a crossroads and will give birth to a changed nation. He called on Kenyans not to be afraid, saying the process which some young people have already downplayed will be fruitful. This as his deputy urged him not to appoint arrogant individuals into the cabinet.
Si mimi nimefungua ukurasa mpya. Sasa mimi nitapanga kabisa. Hii serikali iko hapa mbele. Muniombe. Ndio nipange kabisa, nipate wafanyikazi watakao nisaidia kutimiza ahadi ambazo tuliwekea na mimi na nyinyi. Kwa sababu tunataka kutransform taifa letu la Kenya. Hatuwezi kuendelea kuwa ni nchi ambayo inakopa madeni kiholela. Madeni karibu inazamisha nchi yetu. Na ndio nimesema, hata nimeweka jopo maalum ichunguze hii madeni. Hii madeni ya Kenya ni kiasi gani? Hii madeni ya Kenya ilifanya kazi gani? Na hii madeni ya Kenya tutazuia isiharibu nchi yetu kwa njia gani? So that we can have a country that is steady, that is stable, that is prosperous, and that carries the aspirations of the people of Kenya. Kenya tutaisimamia vizuri mpaka Kenya hii ibadilike. Nyinyi mnajua, kwanza nyinyi wa mama, mnajua saa ya kuzaa mtoto si rahisi. Iko maneno hapo. Ndio hii transformation ya Kenya tunajaribu kuizalisha. Ndio mnaona iko msukosuko kidogo. Lakini saa ile mtoto amepatikana, si mambo inakuwa sawa sawa. Na furaha inakuwa tele. Kwa hivyo msikuwe na wasiwasi. Huyu mtoto wa Kenya, transformation ya Kenya tutaizalisha. Na Kenya itakuja kufurahi.
Mimi rais nikupongeze kwa yale ambayo yote unapanga kuweka Kenya kwa laini, kufuatia zile shida kidogo kidogo tumekuwa nazo. Na mimi nakuunga mkono 100%, ufanye marekebisho kwa serikali yako, utafute wafanyikazi. Kwa sababu kiongozi anaweza kuwa na bidii sana vile uko na bidii. Kwa sababu mimi nikiwa msaidizi wako nina ushuhuda ya kwamba uko na bidii sana. Lakini ukikosa timu nzuri ya kukushikilia na kukusaidia, rais, utapata matatizo. Kwa hivyo wewe kupitia ile decision you have made, umepata nafasi mwafaka. Uunde serikali, utafute watu wazuri ambaye watakusaidia. Watu ambaye wanaheshimu wananchi. Watu ambaye wanapenda Wakenya. Watu ambaye wanataka wewe ufaulu. Na rais, ukiunda hiyo team, nikiwa hapo, tutakusaidia mpaka hii Kenya yetu irudi kwa laini vile inatakikana. Na mimi nataka kuomba hao viongozi wetu ambao wamechaguliwa, tafadhali mrudi mashinani. Kujeni mkae na hao raia. Come back here. Na mkuje msikize ground vile wananchi wanasema, ndio tuweze kumsaidia huyu kiongozi wetu. The way to help our president is to come here and listen to what people are saying and then go and inform him what the people are saying. Musikae Nairobi kwa mikutano ya usiku na hamkuji hapa ground kuchukua ripoti ya wananchi. Na wananchi, rais wanasema wataki pombe haramu irudi katika area hii. And that is the truth. Na sisi tutakaa hapo.
Mimi nataka nikubaliane na Deputy President ya kwamba pombe haramu, madawa ya kulevya haiwezi kuendelea katika taifa letu la Kenya. Nimefanya mabadiliko pale kwa polisi. Nihakikishe ya kwamba hakuna ofisa mwingine tena ataruhusu pombe haramu iuzwe, watoto wetu wahangaike, watoto wetu wakose namna, watoto wetu waishi kwa maisha mabovu ati kwa sababu ya biashara ya watu wachache. Hiyo biashara haramu ya kuuzia watoto wetu sumu na madawa ya kulevya lazima ikome. Na mimi nataka niwaambie provincial administration, kutoka kwa chief, kutoka kupitia kwa assistant county commissioner, all the way mpaka regional commissioner, they must be on their alert. Na counties pia washughulike kuhakikisha kwamba kuna sheria ya kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya kupatiana leseni kiholela, ati center moja kama hiyo iko baa 20, sijui baa 5 kwa center kidogo hapo, na inafunguliwa kutoka asubuhi mpaka saa 7 ya usiku. Jameni, hata mtu anafanya kazi, si anaenda saa 2 anatoka saa 11? Kwani hii pombe inazidi kazi ile mtu anafanya? So tumekubaliana mambo hayo lazima tukomeshe Kenya mzima.
Former United States President Donald Trump survived a weekend assassination attempt days before he is due to accept the formal Republican presidential nomination, in an attack that will further inflame the United States political divide and has raised questions about the security lapses. On Saturday, Trump had just begun a campaign speech in Butler, Pennsylvania, when shots rang out, hitting the former president's right ear and streaking his face with blood. The FBI identified 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, as the suspect in what it called an attempted assassination. He was a registered Republican, according to state voter records, and had made a $15 donation to a Democratic Political Action Committee at the age of 17.
You see something that said, take a look at what happened.
This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well. Again, at this time, we are not prepared to identify who the shooter is. We are close to that identification, and as soon as we are 100% confident in who that individual is, we will share it with the press. With that being said, also, we do not currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify what that motive was. We have intelligence analysts as well, working from our field office in Pittsburgh, working feverishly to attempt to identify the individual who did this and any motives behind why this was done. Right now, we need the public's help. Anyone who was on scene, who saw anything, who identified any information, please report that to the FBI using either the phone number 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at fbi.gov/Butler.
All right, let's get to the newspaper and take a look at what is making headlines, or rather who as well is making headlines across the local dailies this morning. I'll kick it off with the Standard newspaper that speaks of in the eye of the storm, presidential headache. This could be the toughest week for President William Ruto as he faces an acid test. The mystery of women bodies dumped in Kware. The discussion on a broad-based cabinet takes center stage, says the country should pray for him. The youth who have called for another round of protest in spite of the talks to address their issues kicking off today. And many players, however, have given the multi-sectoral conversations a wide berth. So this could be the toughest week ever, being the president of the Republic of Kenya. On how does he now move on to pick a cabinet that will satisfy the people, and as well as, you know, push his bottom-up economic transformation agenda that is better. The dialogue deadlock, youths say they're not ready for talks. Opposition leaders have now turned around and said they're, you know, they don't want to be part of these particular dialogues. As well as the Kware killings, the women bodies that have been recovered, at least 13 bodies have been dumped in Kware, out to be unraveled by the security agencies. And the Gen Z protests, the youths who have said the demonstrations are going on this week despite of changes in government and security forces. So the president walking a tight rope in between a hard place and a rock, and just the question on what does he do next. We'll be having a conversation around that in just a bit with my guests in studio, and on just, you know, what are some of the considerations to take in, even as he plans on picking a new cabinet where there's no timeline. He's not specified when he shall do so, or at least what are the timelines constitutionally, where there are no timelines that have been set up in place, but for the benefit of the country and of his government, this decision ought to be taken very soon. Also, top of the page, Kalonzo tough stand against splits, against dialogue splits opinion. Kalonzo tough stand against dialogue splits opinion, says, you know, the dialogue is not the way to go. Even as the question on, is he finding his voice, or is he just the perennial deterrer? In the wake of the Gen Z backlash, Kalonzo openly abandoned his coalition partner and the president, and he told the two to read the mood of the nation. And what does the mood say? Perhaps no to dialogue. And so that is also a factor to consider on now what this path means as well for the opposition, because ODM leader Raila Odinga, the opposition leader Raila Odinga, you know, last week was in the company of the head of state, said yes to dialogue, but about 24 hours later says, you know, we've had you, or I've had you Kenyans. Through a tweet, he actually said, I've had you Kenyans, and dialogue is not the solution. So what now does the opposition look like, putting in mind that the government is looking for a national, you know, leadership, you know, a path to take where it includes all leaders. So that is something we'll also be having a conversation on. Now let's head over to the Daily Nation that speaks of police theories on city quarry deaths. Police theories on city quarry deaths. The acting Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, transfers all officers at nearby police station as residents protest, and 2 more bodies were fished out of the quarry dump site, even as top detective Mohammed Amin said his officers are looking at various hypotheses, including the involvement of a serial killer, rogue medical practitioner, or cult activity, since the victims, all women, were killed in a similar fashion and bodies dumped at the same spot. Now, that is a story that is on page 2 of the Daily Nation that speaks of, you know, locals run amok as 2 more bodies fished out of the dump site. Well, the Standard put the death tally at about 13. And on this other hand, you know, the Nation has put it at 15. Where it says there are conflicting accounts of the number, with locals putting it at 15 and the police at 10. Now, sound of gunfire and exploding tear gas canisters rent the air in Kware as police engaged angry locals in running battles following the retrieval of 2 more bodies from the dump site, where dozens of human remains have been discovered since Friday. Police were forced to apply force after the rowdy crowd started pelting them with stones while chanting anti-government slogans, with some attempting to set Kware police station ablaze. So that is a story that has been followed up with the Daily Nation, the gruesome scene, of course, that have captured the attention of the country from all quarters on just this sort of death and manner of death. Now, also, the Daily Nation speaks of Azimio calls another meeting today amid split over Ruto dialogue invite. It has emerged that Odinga's camp is also seeking the dissolution of parliament after many Kenyans expressed a vote of no confidence against it during the recent anti-tax protest. Well, we'll also be having a conversation around that. So that is the headline on the Daily Nation that also speaks of Trump assassination scare as White House path gets clearer. Donald Trump was shot in the ear in an attempted assassination during a campaign rally, an attack that will likely reshape this year's U.S. presidential race while raising sharp questions about security provided to Republican candidates. The suspect was shot dead by Secret Service agents. Well, that is the headline on the Daily Nation and the Standard this morning. Well, allow us to take a quick breather at this particular point, but when we come back, we'll be having a conversation around the state of affairs in the country. The presidential headache, should he dialogue or not? And this comes amidst, further calls by Gen Zs for protests this week, as well as the killings in Kware. Well, when we come back, we'll just be having a conversation around this state of the nation. What do the youth want and what does the government want? That conversation returns in a bit. Stay with us. All right, good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Morning Live. We're coming to you live from Kenya's capital. It is just about 45 minutes past the hour mark, and we'd love to get into the conversation this morning. There's so much to talk about on the state of affairs in this country, this particular time and moment that we're in, with the head of state now who's had to bow to pressure from the Gen Zs and other Kenyans at large over bad governance, bad leadership, accountability, and dissolved his government, or at least his cabinet last week. Pardon me, his cabinet was dissolved last week, a 22-man cabinet. In addition to that, the head of state says he's ready for dialogue in a multi-sectoral way. That means, persons from various sectors coming together to have a conversation about what the young people want. What the young people want is definitely not dialogue, because they say they're back on the streets this week for another round of protests. What are they demanding for? More accountability measures, perhaps more austerity measures as well as from the government. Some still say that the head of state has to go. Well, that's a different conversation entirely. But I'm not alone in studio this morning. I'm joined by Ngugi Gashoka, who's a political scientist as well as a public administrator. Thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Right now, perhaps we'll just start on a note of what is happening somewhere near us, and that is in Kware, that is near Mukuru, Kwanjenga, south of Nairobi, in Pipeline area, where about at least 13 bodies have been recovered from that particular area. The DCI held a press conference yesterday and said, the form in which that crime was committed alludes to a similar way that they've died. And, the DCI and the acting Inspector General of Police, that is David Kanja, said the police officers from that area have been transferred to another area. As a public administrator, was that the right move, considering that this is something that happened just near the police station?
First and foremost, allow me to send my condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in this gruesome act.
Yeah.
And I believe, as a Kenyan, nothing of this sort should happen to any Kenyan living within our borders. And first of all, let me also say that it is indeed sudden that this would happen a few meters from where our service is. And therefore, I believe it's within the mandate of the police to do all that pertains to protecting the people. And I believe, as they have said, we just need to wait for the investigations and for that conclusion to be made.
Yes.
And I hope that it shall bring closure to those families. And I just pray it does not happen to any other Kenyan.
Right.
Yes.
Indeed, we do condole and empathize with the families and the people, the community at large that, stays around there. We do understand how much of a traumatic experience this can be, even as we do await upon the post-mortem and subsequent reveal of the, identity of these persons that were found, or the bodies that were found in that particular area. And so that is something that we continue to keep tabs on. As and when we get information, we'll be telling you about it. And so this as well happens at a time when the head of state is in quite a difficult and tense situation in the country, where you're dealing with the victims of the bodies. At the same time, you're dealing with the Gen Z protests. At the same time, you're dealing with talks of dialogue. At the same time, he's also dealing with a cabinet dissolution that happened last week. So basically, at this point, he does not have a finance bill in place. He does not have a cabinet in place. We'll begin with the cabinet. Ngoge, from where you sit, was this a case of bowing to pressure from Gen Zs, or was it a case of this was just the right moment to do that?
I think the president listened. I think he indeed, I do not want to say that he bowed to pressure, because the constitution indeed gives him the power to dissolve cabinet explicitly. And I believe the president, in his own right will and also mind, made this decision consciously. And we can't say that somehow the protests had something to do with this, borrowing from the fact that indeed the finance bill flopped. And I believe it is a sequence of activities that has happened since this protest began. Number one, remember the Gen Z started with the reject finance bill. At the end of the day, it was the presidential assent. The president decided that he's not going to assent to it. He actually said that he had heard what the people had spoken. And indeed, following that, we had seen the schedule that was being shared online towards, among the other things, reject the finance bill. Then the second step was dissolved.
Right. Allow me to cut you short, Ngogi. I'm being informed that your mic has a bit of a problem. So allow us to take a quick breather. We fix that. When we come back, we'll pick it up from there and interrogate why this was not pressure, because had the people not, or had the Gen Zs not called for the cabinet to be dissolved, would it have been dissolved? So that conversation returns in a bit. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Pressure that he bowed to, perhaps you can pick it up from there.
Yes, I believe from my own perspective, the president had already shared his issues when he spoke about calling members in his cabinet or members in some of the principal secretaries. And to his awe, he found out he knew more about these principal secretaries as compared to their respective dockets. And I think that was the first instance where the president felt something might be a problem. He might be having a problem when it comes to his cabinet. And therefore, I believe that this somehow was a way out for him. He might have wanted to make some changes, but due to the fact of the matter on how our cabinet is constituted when the president comes into force, remember, we tend to go around the regional way of ensuring that we have this number of people coming from this particular region that is ordinarily supposed to reflect on the number of votes that you got. Now, I think the president back then felt that if he was to let someone go, he would have a backlash with the people where maybe that particular cabinet secretary is perceived to come from. And then he did not want to change he did not want to alter how our tribal politics have been for the longest period. Right now, if he discards you from his cabinet, it's very hard for your community to come back and try to rescue you. If you listen to the presser by His Excellency, the Deputy President, when he called out to the director of NIS, we saw members from a particular region coming to defend the director of the NIS during this particular period. And therefore, we have not seen that after the president has dissolved that cabinet. So this way, this might be a leeway for him to make the radical changes he felt for so long he needed, but he did not know how to navigate around the tribal tenet of our country. But now, I think he's now placed in a platform that can be able to sort out any mess that he feels is there within his cabinet and still not get a backlash from our tribal underbase.
Right. And Ala, you said it was not a pressure that he was bowing to. But if you look at just the events that led us to this point, initially it started with the anti-finance bill. The bill was rejected. Now it went to anti-government protests. And we saw the youths come out clearly and call out some of these CSs whom they accused of, of opulence, accused of corruption, which begs the question, there was no other way out in this particular position. Perhaps this was one of the things he had to do just to signal to the people that I'm serious about what you people are saying. I'm really taking into consideration what you people are saying. So it was pressure.
I believe from my end, if you look at how the finance bill flopped, there was so much pressure. We had people heading over to Parliament, and remember that on that fateful day when Parliament was voting on matters to do with finance bill, it's the same day we had the protest where some individuals broke into Parliament. If you compare to that pressure that was there during the finance bill, anti-finance bill protest, as compared to anti-cabinet protests, the anti-finance bill protests tend to have some more degree when it comes to the pressure as compared to, from my end, I do not see that much pressure that led to the dissolution of cabinet. There was not, as compared to the pressure that was there during the finance bill protests. I believe, remember that this dissolution came after President William Ruto had the X-Space conversation with the youths. And actually, if you listen in to that conversation, not all members of the cabinet were named in that in those calls for dissolution. The Gen Zs who were there at that particular time singled out a few members of cabinet. And they say, look at this individual, look at this individual, look at how they're doing, look at their credentials. I think this one do not seem to represent the best of our nation. So I think the president had a leeway either to let go of those members who had been adversely mentioned by the Gen Zs, or he had to now he had three options. One, let the cabinet stay. Two, let go of those members who have been who had been mentioned adversely by the Gen Zs. Or three, dissolve the cabinet. Now, he had the option of letting those who had been mentioned. But again, going back, he had one question, I think, at the back of his mind. Will I be awakening the tribal politics of our nation? The president has always said that he wants to go past the tribal politics of our nation. Now, at that particular time, we have just seen, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, members of a particular head of our region calling on some of the CSs to be reinstated into cabinet. And some believe that some did what they were told to do in accordance to the rule of law. But this was at the discretion of the president. So I believe, to a greater extent, the president chose one way. He decided, I'm not going to awaken the tribal politics. I'm going to let go of everyone. Yes. Right.
Now, let's look at the way forward. 22 people have gone home. That means there are 22 vacancies now for the cabinet secretary. And I'm looking at a scenario that whoever comes into any of this position will have to go or undergo a lot of public scrutiny. And the awe of how Kenyans will dig histories and they will want to know who exactly is getting into this position, what has he or she done for the country so far, what position has he been in. And so what sort of cabinet should now come into position, putting in line that you've said the head of state has gone beyond the tribal tenet. So what of cabinet should we expect?
Number one, it's 21 members of the cabinet who have gone home. Remember, we have the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi, who talks about also the Cabinet for Foreign Affairs. And I think one of the questions that is lingering in the minds of political is among the other reason is, has he remained in office as a cabinet for foreign affairs? Or has he remained in office as a cabinet, as a prime cabinet secretary? I think that's an area that I think, remember his office is not there in the constitution. And therefore, there tends to be some murky waters around that. Is he in the office as a cabinet secretary for foreign affairs? Or as a prime secretary? Or is he in the office as a prime cabinet secretary? Yeah, so, but if putting in mind what he brought to the table in 2022, I mean, he's actually in the process of dissolving his own party, ANC, to join UDA. So it's a big gamble the head of state will not dare take. I think the president, in his own mind, believed that His Excellency Musalia somehow has something to offer in this particular governance structure. Yes, indeed, he has been in cabinet for quite some time now, and he's more experienced. I think looking across that cabinet, he's the most most gifted man when it comes to that to time in politics. So looking forward, I believe in 2022, when the president decided to bring this cabinet on board, among them, looking from my own perspective as a political scientist, he was paying what we would call as political dues. Whenever you're trying to acquire political power, you cannot do it so all by yourself. There are those people who you bring on board. In the traditional system of governance, we had the kings and the monarchs. In that particular setup, more often than not, either the king would die and the prince would inherit. In other scenarios, the prince would overthrow maybe the king. Now, the prince would not overthrow the king all by himself. He needed to have his soldiers, he needed to have people who are loyal to him. And whenever he came on board now, those were the people who helped him keep his kingdom in peace. Now, the president, when he came into power in 2022, I think the boardroom agreements were like, as you've put it, what Musalia Mudavadi brought on board. It gave him some baggage. It gave him some bargaining power when it comes to appointments. Now, President William Ruto, looking at what he brought into this cabinet, one thing, he did pay his political dues. Remember, there were members from other political parties who joined in the UDA to form the Kenya Kwanza administration. These members, some ended up being appointed as members of the cabinet. So when in political terms, the president paid his political dues. We've not heard so much of guys coming out to say that the president told me he'll give me this, he'll give me this. In short, we have few number of persons in the cabinet, but to the large extent, he tried as much as possible to pay his political dues. Now, that is settled. He promised you, he gave you. If you mess up, I'm not there. If you mess up, I'm not there. I'm not going to save you. The people that have yes. So nobody can tell President William Ruto right now, like, I helped you to be in power. Yes, you did help me to get into power, and I did pay you back. We had an agreement. Bring this number of votes, and in political ways, I'm going to ensure that you also enjoy the same power. Now, these guys, some of them, I do not want to say to name anyone, came in, served less than now 2 years. They are out there. They have no leverage on President William Ruto in whatever case. Now, President William Ruto heading forward, he'll be, as he spoke, I think yesterday, he was somewhere in a function in Nyandarua, and he said, like, he asked the church to pray for him, that he wants now people who will help him work, that he wants people who will help him achieve the promises he made to the people of Kenya. What does that one mean? Then the people he had were not helping him to achieve what loosely translated
what he had promised.
Yeah.
In short, in political realm, we would say these are people who do not believe in this ideology in one way or the other. That in one way or the other, they came into this thing because either it's because of a paradigm shift that was there back then, but now, this level of accountability never found. I think they never thought that this level of accountability would get to this point, that would go all the way to the cabinet level and actually to the head of the state. So, or maybe they misconstrued President William Ruto to the deputy president. He back then, maybe he was, remember, Deputy President Gachagua during that press at some point, he said, President William Ruto and I, we were darling. We are the darling of the people.
How did we get here?
How did we get here? So maybe even the people who are serving cabinet misconstrued President William Ruto to Deputy President Ruto. This is a person who has gone a different paradigm shift. He has a mandate to deliver. He has the power to fire people now. He has people to employ.
Is it possible, just from what you've said, is it possible that there were some in cabinet that were the force behind the lack of bromance that we saw between the head of state and his deputy for the past couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden cabinet is home and then that brotherhood is back? You
see, days running up to this dissolution, we had Deputy President in a couple of statements saying, I'm an elected Deputy President. I'm not appointed. Anybody who was keen would not just have heard, they would have listened to what the Deputy President was saying. In short, in politics, he was saying, you guys, you might have been appointed by the head of the state, but you need to remember one thing. You guys can go home at any particular moment. You know, for me, I've been elected, so I do not want to preempt that is what you're saying, but loosely translated to mean, as much as some of you might try, and the Deputy President said that there are people who are around that particular establishment who are maybe in one way or the other trying to demean what he was doing or the other things, but he was as firm and as eloquent as he could be, and he said, "I'm elected. That means if I'm going home, it's the people to send me home. It's not the appointing authority." And he said that his bosses are the people and President William Ruto. So even if the president wanted to maybe discard the deputy president, there's a long way to do that. Now, are there people in the cabinet who might be in one or the other messed up the bromance that we saw? Just yesterday, I think we saw Deputy President coming in with the Kenya Air Force, with the military chopper. So I think in one way or the other, maybe there are people who may be messed up somewhere, or maybe His Excellency the Deputy President has just taken a break from using the military choppers, and maybe he wanted to fly private. So good things await. But heading forward, the president will not be looking now. I think he will not be looking now for loyalists. He's done with the political loyalty. He's going to look now for people who can be able to deliver for him. He needs people who, one thing, will be able to go back to the people, listen in, and share to the president directly what is happening directly. Because if he goes the loyalty way, he might not get the truth, as he has gotten it in this short span of time that he has been able to engage with the people directly. The other thing, I believe now the cabinet that is coming, and I do not want to say this in low terms, that the president will now be their boss. The people will be coming in. They'll be getting their accountability directly from the people. If anything, President William Ruto is going to have a very flexible time. He's going to have a good time. Yes, he's going to have a very good time, an easy time. He'll only tell you, I might want to keep you. But you see, when there's a public uproar, you have to let go. But if the public says you are going to stay, even if I want you to leave, but as long as the public is happy with you, you're going to stay in my cabinet. So I think this now has sorted out so many problems when it comes to political leverage and political bargaining power. The president is at a is at a perfect point to be able to steer this country forward with less baggage.
Yeah.
He can be able to sit down, and anybody who is coming in now into that cabinet knows, one, there was someone else in this position.
Yeah.
And I'm coming in here to do only one thing, to sort out the mess in the country. I'm coming in here to get the better plan. Now, the other question now that might be lingering in the president's mind would be, the people that I'm bringing in, do they understand the better plan? Can we put the better plan on hold for some time now and say, this is the mess we are in? Who are the people who are going to help me sort out this particular mess? Even if we are going to hold the better plan for a few times, or for a few days, or a few months, or even a year, and at least ensure that we get now the public confidence, because it seems the public confidence with his government had eroded. And the president, during the X-Space, he said that indeed he had at times to call members of his government to tell them, that's not how you speak to people. That's not how you engage the public. You need to change this. And I think when the president realized, I have to step too low now to even apologize on behalf of the people, on the people whom I've given the mandate to lead, I think now there is a problem. So the people who are coming in to serve in this particular cabinet, the bar has been set. Not in public commission, not only in the public service commission, but in the public opinion.
Yeah, and that's a good step towards the country's, democracy, because it means that Article 1 of the Constitution is reinforced even more, that the people of the Republic of Kenya have got the power. And, which now brings me to this national dialogue that was set to begin today, or is set to begin today, but there has been telltale signs of whether or not it will start, because right after that press conference, which was at KICC, I believe, was it last week, Thursday, the head of state said, there needs to be a multi-sector conversation around this, and he had given an opportunity to about 50 youths to come and have this conversation, and even said, because of the austerity measures, whoever will be in this forum will be catering for their own, expenses. But the youths are very loud and very clear, and they're saying they do not want to dialogue. Why do they not want to dialogue?
I cannot speak on behalf of the Gen Zs, but I could be able to read what is being shared online, because the Gen Z are communicating via online, via internet, and they are not used to the traditional model of dialogue.
Calling for press conferences.
Calling for press conferences. These are people who are enjoying this democracy indeed, and it's something to be happy about. You can see countries across the continent and even way beyond actually celebrating what we are, and actually warning their members of government, telling them, you see what is happening in Kenya. I believe the reason as to why that the Gen Zs might be out there saying we don't want dialogue is simply because they've put it out there what they want. They've said outright what they want. You see, some of the discussions being shared online, they're saying, now the cabinet has been solved. Now, for those people who are coming in, we don't care their tribe, we don't care about regional balance, we don't care about, I don't know where you came from, we don't care, you are Kenya. Number one. Secondly, you must be, I think they're saying from 35 to 60 years of age, you should be in that bracket, if I'm not wrong, but you should not go past 60 years of age. I think that is the retirement age in Kenya. So you shouldn't go past that age. Secondly, they have also said you should not have been mentioned in any adverse report on civil, I think, on criminal case. In short, they have said, they have put it out there. They have not given the president names. They have just told, they have just told him, Mr. President, this is what we want. We do not want these people. We do not want anybody in this particular field. We also need someone who is, if you are given a ministry to lead, we need we need to see your credentials, we need to see your expertise, you need to see your experience, so that if you are given the health ministry, I mean, you need to be a medical practitioner in one or the other. You need to have some understanding when it comes to the medical field. If you are given infrastructure, roads, you need to have an understanding on how the interconnectedness of this particular ministry, because it's not just transport, you have also infrastructure. So if you are given ministry when it comes to blue economy, we need to see your understanding of the blue economy. So as much as I might be wondering why maybe the president would like to have this dialogue on forming a cabinet, maybe. Is it too hard to get someone with this? I mean, we are looking for just 21 individuals in a country of 50 million Kenyans. So it might not be how are we going to have this conversation? I think the Gen Zs are not used to traditional forms of conversation, and now they've gone way ahead, and maybe in one or the other, the instruments of dialogue in government are now unable to catch up with the models that the Gen Zs are using. But they've said it outright. Like, these are the people we want. We just want to see you. You've never been mentioned, and you should not be serving. I saw one of the pamphlets saying you should not have served in any form of government, including the just dissolved cabinet. So, if I were President William Ruto, I would just take that what is there in public and say, I dissolved this cabinet through public. I flopped the finance bill through public, yes. And now I'm forming this cabinet through public. And the public have said this. I've not seen anything being shared online on we want people from Central Kenya, we want these people from Luo Nyanza, we want these people from Garissa, we want this. As much as the constitution ensures that we need to have the regional balance, and we need to be conscious of the regional balance and the diversity in the republic. But I believe initially we had the 8 provinces that represented the big communities in one or the other. So even if we were to look for 8 individuals from those provinces, we would still get the number. So the president now doesn't need to worry about, does not need to worry about tribe. The country has moved forward. From that, you've seen the Gen Zs have also shared. I think I've seen calls from members from online calling for the former cabinet secretary for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, to come on board. We've seen pamphlets coming.
They just want people that
they feel this group that, according to how they were divided in terms of age, is the first group that graduated from the free primary education. There were people who went through the Matiang'i system in college and some in high school. So they kind of feel someone like Dr. Fred Matiang'i had a grip of what he was doing. He had things on his hand. He knew where we are heading, and where we've come from, and he knew these are the right things. I remember a clip he said back in Parliament. He said, "We are not in this job to be popular. We are in this job to do the right thing." I think the president now needs to take that he's already popular. He needs now to be in that job to do the right thing. And this is the take. Someone by the name Plato said that the human race will have no respite from evils until those who are leaders and who have the human race will have no respite from evils until the political philosophers become leaders, or through some divine dispensation, those who are leaders acquire political power, and become philosophers. Now, the president is the leader right now. And being a prayerful person, as we have seen, through divine dispensation, he has become a political philosopher now. So the president currently is a philosopher. And I commend him, and he's also a scientist. So he has the banner has been raised is purely on accountability and integrity issues. Unfortunately for those people who are coming in, these are not people who you just need to say and say out there, I'm clean. They'll dig into your family. They're going to dig into your past.
Your businesses.
Yes, your businesses.
People
you see,
engaged with.
I mean, these guys shared contacts of the members of parliament online, and they decided to kuwasalimia all through. So actually, the mandate now is not with parliament. because they also feel that Parliament is not representing them.
Has let them down?
Yes, has let them down. So the mandate now is not even with Parliament when it comes to accountability in politics. Now, the accountability now rests with the people, and more so the young people of the Republic of Kenya. And even there are those people who might not be Gen Zs when it comes to age, but they are Gen Zs at heart.
Yeah.
There are people who share the frustrations of the Gen Zs,
Yeah.
you know. So I think the president is having a field day. Mr. President, you are having a field day. You don't have to try so hard.
What a time to be a president.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be a president right now.
Yeah. So let me go back to something that Jeremiah Kioni, the SG for Jubilee Party, tweeted just the other day. He says the Waki report, the Ndugu report, the Bibe report, the NADCO report, all these were done under dialogues. How many more? The writing is on the wall. Implement the constitution. Now, there's this card that comes with dialogue, and the thought that those people that dialogue, just a few of them will benefit. This will come through perhaps appointments, will come through support from the government. And so people are of the view that at any point, if they are to go to dialogue, it will see, or they will see the results of that in just a few months, and then everything goes back to factory setting. Is that why perhaps there's a resentment to dialogue, because they do know that once one person has been identified to dialogue with the state, in a few months things will not be as they were?
I would like to share that presumption with you. And you see, just I think a day after His Excellency, the right former Prime Minister, and on the steps of the KICC with President William Ruto, there was that IBC signing and everything. Then on his account, and I think Secretary General for ODM said that the right former Prime Minister was there to, among other things, to represent the people whom he leads. He also has a following. Yes, he has his own followers. But you see, once bitten, twice shy. We had the handshake. We are now having the NADCO report. We now have another dialogue. I think I would just like to maybe take what the last part of Kioni's statement says, like, let's implement the constitution. The dialogue we had it in 2010. It was everybody's dialogue. Yeah. We had that particular dialogue. It has taken us so far. That's why we are enjoying this freedom we are getting here. So I think if I was the president, I would just say this. Mr. President, the dialogue happened in 2010. You have a constitution that put you in power.
In power, yeah.
And that constitution is still telling you you have 3 more years till your first term is done. So is it a time, the country is not broken on tribal lines.
Yeah.
The country is not broken on regional lines. The country, the people tend to feel that the breakage in the country now is on economic, is on the social life. And this constitution somehow guarantees us all the emancipation when it comes to those economic freedoms. So I believe, remember SG Kioni is a member of the Azimio brigade.
And also part of the NADCO team.
Yes, so, and he's on the opposition, and he's saying, just implement the constitution. If he's speaking from that particular end, I believe, in good light, the president now has the most sacred point. We always say that opportunity is a haughty goddess. It dances with those already on the dance floor.
Yeah.
President William Ruto, this is an opportunity that has come to our life. It might never happen ever again. It's your time to fix the country, and you have no baggage whatsoever. Your only guiding principle is the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Do everything that that Constitution says. If anybody might come to ask you why you're doing this, just give them the Constitution. It is the agreement, it's the dialogue that people had 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Yeah. It's a dialogue that was made by the people of Kenya. And they went and chose that. And that dialogue that happened is the one that guarantees you now another second term.
Yeah. Mr.
President, I would just tell him, as Kioni says, just implement the Constitution and everything will be okay. Because everything that happened, everything that has followed this protest all the way from June 25th, it has been about the constitution. It has been about the laws. It has been about accountability. Gen Zs have not taken anything out of the parameters of what guide this country heading forward. So I think the president just needs to ensure, as Keone says, that he implements the constitution. He has the landmark. He has his better plan, and he has the constitution. The better plan is his vision for the country. The constitution is his guiding light. So all is not lost. The country is still moving on, even right now when we do not have cabinet secretary. We have not seen members of communities coming and saying, oh, we want to be part of that particular dialogue. They want to be part of that particular dialogue. Now this discussion that is going to happen, I believe that no single community will feel that we are represented when we see someone from our community in that particular government. That is now all gone with the just dissolved cabinet. The president can decide, and even the constitution itself just guarantees that, just ensure there is regional balance. As simple as that. Just follow the constitution. Yes, just follow the constitution. Mr. President, you are going to have a good time. Just follow the constitution, get new people on board. The JZs are going to give you some time to ensure that that cabinet is up, and then they'll be your watchdog. So if I can use that word, that the public will be your watchdog. You don't have to struggle too much. You don't have to call your members of cabinet to ask them what is going, and then the members of public will tell you. Then normalize having one X space each and every single month. Just say at the end of every single month, I'm going to have an X space to hear directly. Because some of these clips, you'll only get them on X, on TikTok, on Twitter. And
some of these questions were never really out before, but they're now coming out.
They are now coming out. And I think when the president felt the frustration with the people, and he realized that the people who were talking were not talking about we as Kikuyus, we as Kalenjins, we as Luos, we've been left out. We feel they were talking about, and even they went ahead and some even told him, Mr. President, if this continues, the last person who spoke on X told him, Mr. President, if this continues, we are going to marshal up and we are going to get our votes. And we are going to chase them away, including you. I think the president decided to choose the last laugh as compared to the first laugh, because the first laugh he had with his cabinet. He chose them, they did what they were able to do. But now, when that political threat came, that we are going to chase you out of that office, the president said, now, even before I leave now, I think I need now to have the last laugh. Yes.
Right. We've got a few minutes to wrap it up. But I want to speak about this disconnect that there seems to be between the government, the Kenya Kwanza administration in particular, and the people of Kenya. Yes, Gachagua says they were darling of the people. In fact, that if you would have met people that time, with the yellow color, calling themselves hustler. But I don't think at this point anyone would want to be called a hustler or be associated with that because of just what happens. Now, for the Kenya Kwanza administration, 2 years later on, seem to have lost the people's confidence, seem to have lost the people's love, and if anything, to go by the votes, or at least some of those that voted for the government and what they're saying now. What does this mean for the Kenya Kwanza administration? We've not seen their members of parliament in public. Right now, if they go to any gathering, they're bowed down, they're chased away. That love is lost. What is this for Kenya Kwanza administration?
I would now be waiting for changes in parliament. I would be waiting for those changes in parliament, and also be waiting for changes in the UDA political party. I'll be waiting for those changes because going forward, this government has 2 more finance bills to bring on board. If those finance bills or any other law that comes into parliament and takes the trajectory that the previous finance bill took, this government will be in a lot of shackles and troubles. I'll be waiting for changes in parliament and also in that political party, because what now changes is the people who were fired, and let's say they were fired from this cabinet, and they were members and they were leaders or some head political parties which formed the Kenya Kwanza administration, in one way or the other, there are two options. They might decide to stick into that Kenya Kwanza administration, or they might decide to opt out of that particular Kenya Kwanza alliance agreement that was there. But now, the other question that might follow, if a political party decides to leave the alliance and you are elected through that alliance, do you leave the political seat? Do you relinquish your parliamentary seat? Going forward, nobody has brought issues to do with how UDA party is being brought. Somehow, sometimes back we saw one of the members, I think two of the members, sharing something to do with how the interior of the UDA party is facing some few challenges, and even there were name callings here and there.
Yeah.
But the president has just shared a shockwave. And I want to say His Excellency Mr. Earthquake, Musalia, as he was called back in politics, back in 2022, he said there'll be earthquake. And we never knew that the earthquake would be 2 years down the line. The earthquake now is here. So heading forward and moving on, I would expect that the president makes those changes in parliament. Because I believe if the president had the ability to fire parliament, especially members whom somehow he might feel, and he said during one of the interviews with the members of the press, he said maybe his cabinet would have done better, maybe his communication team would have done better. But you see, he does not mean communication team as a press unit of State House. Politically speaking, it means those people who speak on behalf of the president. It might be mostly those members who represent him in areas where he enjoyed support. Whenever cabinet secretaries go out there, they represent the executive. Whenever members of the ruling coalition go out there, they represent the ruling party. So the president felt, and he has done that which was within his limits. But now, it calls now for the organization of the political party, UDA, and the organization of parliament, reorganization of parliament. Remember, the youths pointed out some of the leaders in parliament who demeaned them. And if that continues, and you see members have toned down, you see members of parliament somehow have toned down. So if that continues, I'll be waiting for the president to make those changes as soon as possible before he brings any other law into parliament. If he does not do that, we might see a reincarnation of something else, maybe changing or something else coming up, and him having to let go of even some of his friends. Because now, unfortunately for him, unlike the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, legacy for His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta called on him during the last leg to ensure. Actually, what we saw towards the 3 years of his leadership are what we are seeing now in the first 2 years of President William Ruto's leadership. So President William Ruto's now legacy has called on him, and we always say, fate really calls us at a moment of our choosing. So for President William Ruto, it has really indeed called on him when he least expect. Now the president now has to sort out his legacy as early as of now. Heading forward, will now UDA be there when it comes to 2027 politics? The normal science that was there that formed UDA now has been called to order. They need to alter something. They need to alter the leadership and how the structure of UDA is now faring on. Deep down into the heart of UDA, some alterations have come in. We might see a new political party coming in 2027. Maybe the president might decide to reorganize this particular party. It might be UDA, but with new formations completely. Because if this resentment that we are seeing online continues, I fear that Parliament especially those who voted yes for the finance bill, all of them might go home. Majority of them are from this administration. So the president might find himself in a scenario that in 2027, he does not have control of parliament. He does not have, he might find himself that opposition now has a bigger say like we had in 2008,
right.
and the president might not be able to more so change things that he might in 2027, but as of now, he has a golden opportunity to change that.
All right. Thank you very much, Ngugi Gashoka, who's a political scientist and public administrator. Thank you for coming in just to shed light on the events in the country. Now, to just take a look at your feedback, we're having Harriet Njoroge, who says watching from Narok. Thank you very much. We've got Betty Kamau, who says good morning and watching. Thank you very much. We've got Miri Kanyi following from Turkey. Asante sana. Skylock as well says nice conversation, watching from Buruburu. Thank you. Eliud Gadage, great show, analyst putting it right, asante sana, as well as satisfied James Washira, I hope you're satisfied, who says watching as well. So thank you very much, ladies, gents, for the feedback this morning. In case you're just tuning in and you've missed this broadcast, you can rewatch it across our social media platforms and keep the conversation going, even as we do a wait upon which direction, which way forward for Kenya, following this national dialogue that the head of state has called on. The Gen Z says, you know, they do not want the dialogue, they just want some of these tenets of the constitution implemented, and to ensure that the country, everyone loves this country, by the way. We're having these conversations because we love this country. Indeed. And so we are hoping that, you know, everything turns out well at the end of the day. So thank you for watching. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Do enjoy the rest of your broadcast. Have a wonderful morning.